You're stressed, burned out, stuck, and you've probably spent a considerable amount of time trying to figure out why, blaming yourself, your habits, your resilience, your attitude. Maybe you've read the books, done the routines, and taken the breaks, and still nothing fundamentally changes. And here's why. The stress isn't the problem. The burnout isn't the problem. They're signals. What's actually causing them, the real source, is a set of systems that are operating on you right now that you were never taught to see. Psychological mechanisms, philosophical constructs, cultural machinery. All of it designed, whether intentionally or not, to keep you manageable, predictable, and compliant. And here's what you need to know about these systems. You cannot fight what you cannot see, because the moment you can see them clearly, they lose their grip, not partially, significantly. And that's what this series is about. My name is Fabian. I'm a psychologist, and for a significant part of my career, I worked inside the exact kind of environments, corporate structures, large organizations, the full machinery of modern work culture. I've sat with executives burning out in silence. I've watched genuinely capable people spend years making themselves smaller to fit roles that were never built for them. I've seen what prolonged exposure to these systems does to decision making, to identity, to physical health. I've lived through enough of it myself to know that nobody warns you going in. So, what I kept noticing across all of it was the people suffering most weren't weak. They weren't failing, they weren't operating without a map. They were responding to forces they could feel but couldn't name, which meant they had no real leverage over them. At some point, that stopped being acceptable to me. I'm creating this series because understanding these systems, really understanding them, changes everything. Not because knowledge is inspiring, because it's functional. Because you cannot make a free choice inside a mechanism you don't know is running. This series is called Control Systems. Each video covers mechanisms, psychological, philosophical, or cultural, that operate on you without your conscious awareness or consent. We're going to name them, explain how they work, and show you exactly where their leverage over you comes from. Not to make you angry, not to give you a villain to blame, but because understanding control systems is how you stop being controlled by them. It's not life hacks, no motivational reframing, just clarity and the agency that comes with it. When you finish this series, you will have a deeper understanding of the architecture that shapes how you think, that determines what you tolerate and why you feel the way you do. So the next time you feel that particular flavor of stuck, that exhausted, vaguely hopeless, this is just how it is feeling, you know exactly what you're looking at. And knowing, understanding what you're looking at is the first real step towards doing something about it. Less stress, more agency, a fundamentally different relationship to the system you operate in. This is the goal of this series. Let's start with one of the oldest, most effective control systems ever devised. You're exhausted. You work hard. You play by the rules. You show up. And somehow you're still falling behind. The system extracts everything you have, gives you moving goalposts in return. More work, more cost, retirement receding into the distance every time you blink. And you went through all the fixes, the spa weekend, the digital detox, the reset routines, and they work for a couple of days, and then Monday hits. The emails stack up, the meetings pile on, and you're right back in the grinder. The problem is not your stress level. That's just a symptom. The actual problem is the story you've been sold about what it means to be good, a good person, a good employee, a good team player. This first control system is that story. Friedrich Nietzsche called it herd morality. Quick note on Nietzsche, because most people's understanding of him stops at a half-remembered lecture and a vague association with nihilism. He wasn't just that. He looked at moral rules of society and asked an arguably dangerous question. Who or what actually benefits from those morals? And the answer he came up with is a system born from weakness and resentment. One that rebrands conformity as virtue and quietly frames strength, independence, and self-determination as moral problems. Nietzsche argued that the collective drags everyone down to their level by manufacturing values and then claiming those values to be morality itself, not preferences or group norms, morality, universal, handed down, non-negotiable. So self-mastery, vitality, independence, and even autonomy, and especially free will, all get vilified because they're threatening. They break the ceiling of mediocrity that the system needs everyone to stay under. And this mechanism works because you never see it as a mechanism. You see it as your conscience. If you translate this to today's world, you can just look at the values you were raised with, the ones still treated as virtues today. Humility is good, sacrifice is noble, don't stand out, that's arrogant. Don't ask for more, that's greedy. Don't question authority, that's disrespectful. Those virtues aren't random, they're functional. They produce compliant, self-regulating people through the threat of being cancelled, fired, or cast out. And in exchange, people surrender their individuality, their autonomy, their free will for the comfort of staying part of the group. And here's what makes the system so durable. The people who struggle the hardest before giving in often become its most aggressive enforcers, because admitting they sold themselves out is too costly. The mental tension that comes from acting against your own values, this cognitive dissonance, demands resolution, and the easiest resolution is making sure everyone around them makes the same compromise they did. This is not cynicism. This is observable. You've seen it many times if you think about it. The solution Nietzsche proposed is pretty straightforward. Find your own values. Build a morality that actually serves your autonomy and your growth, rather than just following the one that systematically punishes both and tries to keep you small. Which, by the way, is why so many extraordinarily successful people deviate from social norms quite significantly. Psychologically speaking, often even pathologically so. But that's a topic for another video in this series. Stay tuned. Now, apply this to your own life. You stay late because that's just how it is. You absorb someone else's workload because you don't want to seem difficult. You don't negotiate because it feels wrong, aggressive. It's not something that you do. This discomfort you're feeling, that guilt, that's not your conscience. That's this control system running. And the moment you can see that distinction, really see it, it starts losing its grip over you. That's the value of understanding this. So Nietzsche gave us the philosophical skeleton, but the psychological machinery underneath it, that's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Perhaps this topic even. In the 1950s, a social psychologist named Solomon Asch ran a now very famous series of experiments. He put people into a room with others and showed them a simple visual puzzle. Which line is longer? The answer was obvious, unmistakable. There's no way you're getting this wrong. But everyone else in the room, actors that were in on the experiment, gave the wrong answer unanimously. What do you think happened? Around 75% of real participants went along with the group at least once. They said the wrong answer out loud, knowing it was wrong, not because they're stupid. Because the pressure to conform, the fear of being the single dissenting voice, overpowered their own direct perception of reality. This fear is called conformity pressure, and it's a psychological force that pulls us to align our behavior and our stated beliefs with the group. Even when we know the group is wrong, even when the cost of agreeing is real and personal. This is almost hardwiring in our brains. Human beings are social animals. For most of our evolutionary history, expulsion from the group was a death sentence, literally. So our nervous system built a powerful automatic drive to fit in, to not make waves, to stay inside the circle. But that drive has no ability to assess context. It doesn't know you're in an open plan office rather than a prehistoric hunting camp. It doesn't evaluate whether the group you're conforming to has a good strategy, functional culture, or works in your best interest. It only has two modes really: deviate and you're at risk, conform and you're safe. So when you sit through meetings that insult your intelligence and you say nothing, when you accept compensation below your value because asking feels too dangerous, uncomfortable, when you push through a panic attack because everyone's under pressure, you're not being professional. You're not being resilient. You're running a survival script designed for a threat landscape that hasn't existed for thousands of years. The system you're operating in, consciously or not, is counting on that script to keep running. So here's what understanding this actually gives you. The next time you feel that pull to go along with something that conflicts with your own judgment, you'll recognize it for what it is. Not wisdom, not conscience. An ancient automatic mechanism firing in a context it was never designed for. You don't have to override it heroically every time. You just have to see it, be aware of it. Because once you can see the mechanism, you have a choice. Before that, you don't. What I want you to try is a practical exercise. Let's call it the one honest choice. One question every morning. What is the smallest real choice I can make today that is genuinely mine? Not a life overhaul, not quitting your job on Tuesday. Just one small decision that comes from you. Not the pressure to comply, to perform or please. Maybe that's saying no to something you'd normally endure. Maybe it's setting a limit you've been avoiding or tolerating. Maybe it's as simple as writing down one thing you truly desire, not what you're supposed to want, and keeping it somewhere safe, somewhere private. Because small choices compound, and making one conscious choice per day starts to rebuild something. These control systems work very hard to erode the lived sense, the feeling, the knowledge that you are the author of your own life, not just a well-managed drone in somebody else's game. Here's what I want you to take from this video. The stress, the exhaustion, the feeling of being trapped. None of that is evidence that something is wrong with you. You're not broken. It's evidence you're a reasonably functional human being, responding to systems that are working exactly as designed. Systems that benefit from your compliance, your self-doubt, and your inability to see them clearly. You've just seen two control systems, named and explained. And if something shifted in how you perceive your situation, that's your agency starting to light up again. Understanding is not passive. It changes your relationship to what you're looking at. In the next video of this series, we go into the mechanism that operates underneath all of this. Free will, specifically, what happens to you psychologically and behaviorally when you stop believing that you have any, and what happens when you decide deliberately that you do. The research on this is not what most people would expect, and it explains, kinda uncomfortably so, why some people break out of these systems and why most don't. See you next time. And thank you very much for watching this free will transmission.